Hey guys, this is National Master Kevin Yang for part 2 in the same position for Aman's game. So in Aman's game, we talked about at this point where, considering the multiple alternatives, we considered knight c3, knight g3. So now let's take a look at what happens, right? So what about knight g3? What happens? So when I like to calculate, I like to ask myself, what does my opponent do? Right? So first of all, knight g3 happens. What does black do? What is black's plan? Right? So first thing I thought was knight f6. And here's the thing, is that after king g1, after something random as king g1, black could play c5, c4, right? So after c4, right, preventing this push, black can play b5. And so what black is trying to do is sort of, he knows he can't do anything much on this side, so he's trying to break free on the queen side. So that's what black's trying to do. So that's why you might have thought about knight c3 as well. But our opponent, Aman, went with the right instinct, went with g4. And now what the computer is saying is knight takes e4. I didn't see this during the game. After queen takes, knight f6, queen g2, e4, and g5. There is no way I would have thought that this was good enough for me. I'm looking at this, right? The bishop is putting on pressure, the queen might be putting on pressure. I thought there is no way I'm going to accept this, right? So I did have knight takes e4, but I didn't. Instead, I played f6. And what I did with f6 is I said, okay, you know what? You win with your attack. But what I have to do is I have to prevent you from playing g5. But by doing so, this knight is going to look terrible, right? So my goal will be get the rook here, get the rook here, get the knight situated, get the knight in, and sort of replay it back to the game. That's my goal. That's my plan. So Aman plays a great move, knight g3, right? Bringing in the attackers. Thinking about landing on f5, maybe thinking about bishop e3, bishop f5, trying to kick this knight out, because this knight is very important. It protects the golden square. It protects where white wants to go. And so I play c5. Knowing that I don't have any play on this side, I look to play on the queen side. So think about this. If c4 happens, I have to think about b5, right? And after takes, I'll think about c4. Bishop e2, I'll thinking about take on b5. Something like that. So I'm looking for play. I'm desperately looking for play, but I can't do anything with these pieces, really, because I'm sort of tied down, right? So Aman plays knight f5. And, I thought, okay, I mean, that's a pretty good move. First of all, right, I thought about, what if I trade? Right, knight takes, I thought, ugh, bishop check, king h8, g takes f5. Brings the pressure, not great, right? So I rejected this right away. I thought capturing, no, think about this. When you think about capturing another piece, when you think about trading, you think about multiple things. You have to think about whether the trade is good for you, first of all. So in this trade, we'll notice that, well, let's look to the earlier trade, right? In this earlier trade, when we open things up, right, the pawn takes here, the rook comes here, the bishop checks here, and all that, it's only good for my opponent. when you trade, you want it to benefit yourself in some way. And so here, after playing c4, bishop e2, here I said, you know what? I'm going to take on f5. The reason being that I'm going to trade a rook and I'm going to make this attack make it less severe than it seems. So I did. Took, bishop takes, brought the rook out. Rook g1. Aman is playing perfectly right now. Bishop takes h6 is coming, so I thought king h8. Queen g4, right? Putting on the pressure. Very good. I played bishop c5. Now, let's look at this. I was thinking about bishop f8, but then I thought bishop e2, b5, and now look at this. Bishop takes h6, right? You take here, bam, queen g8, checkmate. But if, right, white takes here now, rook takes d1 is there. Queen takes d1, g takes h6, and white is still dominating. Because the reason is, these two look like idiots compared to these two, right? So, let's take, for example, queen d5. Now, after bishop g7, white could take a sweet time, rook g3, swing it over to b3, swing it over to c3 and all that. Meanwhile, these two guys look like haven't seen the sun in a while. They look like they've died and rotted once. So it just goes to show how bad my pieces are, how bad this knight is, right? So I played bishop c5. I was thinking the queen protects this. There's no threat of bishop takes h6. So I thought, okay, it's time to activate my pieces. Bishop e2, b5, rook g3. Now, in this case, I would think about really two things. I have to think about maybe how I can get the queen here, get the bishop here, and sort of like penetrate my way into the position, right? And this is one of those positions where you want to think, where's the best place to put my pieces? And for white, best place to put this guy is here. It's not easy to think about those things, but doing a little bit of dreaming will not hurt. And so one way of suggesting to propose a solution is queen here, bishop here, get the queen to trade off, and after take, the bishop will come back here. That's the goal. That's what I'm trying to instill, this sort of imaginary thinking that one day you'll get to your good position. Where does this bishop want to be? Well, probably wants to be here, maybe, annoying this sort of queen that's trying to protect this pawn, right? You want to annoy the queen a little bit, or this bishop should trade off with this guy, because this guy's good. And if we left this guy with this guy, I'd much prefer this guy. So those are two things we want to consider. We want to consider the ideal position of the pieces. And so, rook g3, I like the idea also. Maybe thinking about rook c3, maybe pushing the pawn up. So I think this is a good start. I play queen f7, and I think, you know what? I want to get the knight activated. Because let's look at it before. If I tried to activate the knight from before, well, now I'm screwed. Bishop takes h6 comes down, and I have to protect with rook d7. It's not going to look pretty. So I thought, okay, I have to get out my pieces. Knight f8, f4, knight d7, queen f3, and now I'm starting to take the tide of the game because of this move f4. And f4 is doing is that now I get to bring my knight in. And bringing my knight in is the most important thing in the game. Because you saw in the previous moves that the knight was here, right? You move it here, here, here. Now it's in the game. And now good things are happening for black, right? I'm no longer tied to this pawn. I can get my queen out, I can get my rook here, all those things are happening for me. So queen c3, I play queen b7. The intention being that after bishop takes, queen takes with check, bishop f3, and queen takes bishop, gaining an extra pawn. So that's my intention. So instead, Aman plays bishop f3. Now this is the first slip up, other than the slip up of allowing my knight to e5. This is the first major slip up. And so I play b4. And after a takes b4, bishop takes b4, the queen is only allowed to one square. And then there's bishop d2, right? And I guess the worst thing to happen is probably, the best thing to happen is to give up the queen for the bishop and the rook. But Aman missed that the bishop was hanging, so that was a little bit unfortunate. And then it all pretty much collapsed from there, right? So I felt like this was a really well played game. And if we look in the opening phase, I just messed it up. I should have played d5 here. I should have played b5 here, right? So as black, I did mess up as well. And then, I was fighting my way to equality. Aman slipped up a little bit, but that was fine. h6, which was a bad move because I didn't realize that, white could just ignore it because of this hook down here, right? a3 was fine. I thought it was a really brilliant move because, just a waiting move. And so, rook d8, this was all standard, right? So this was all fine. So there was not much to critique from here. And f4. As I said before, f4, if I had to decide a move that lost Aman the game, it was f4. And so, if we think about things, I got my pieces active, and really that's how I won. So hopefully, Aman, you enjoyed this. Hopefully, for everyone else, you learned something as well. So thank you.